My name's Lachlan, and I have quadriplegic cerebral palsy. Today, I want to talk about something a little bit different than my usual area of conversation, but it's not that much different because I think it all kind of ties together and it's all interconnected. Today, I want to talk about the idea that people don't need to have faith in anything higher than themselves, and the idea that we can simply create our own morality as we go, and we'll be fine with that. Because the truth is that no, we can't. That is a lie. Now, for a little bit of background as to my religious views. I grew up as a teenager attending a local Presbyterian church. If you, by any chance, are new to my videos, I am South African, and like I said, I have quadriplegic cerebral palsy. It is a severe physical disability that I was born with. Now, these days, I'm 35 years old, by the way, I actually don't know what I believe as far as God is concerned. I'm not sure whether we were created by a God who truly cares about the state of our individual lives. And the reasons for that are complicated and probably best addressed at another time. But what I do know is that the moral structures that are expressed and promoted in the Bible, they work. What we have now does not. The reason that Christianity and biblical teachings have lasted for literally thousands of years is that they have practical utility. Whether or not you yourself believe in the existence of an omnipotent and omnipresent God is irrelevant to the argument I'm going to make here. Because today we live in a world where everyone thinks they can just do as they please, and that everyone can act as their own moral arbiter, and that somehow won't cause chaos. Which, if you look at everything going on in the world today, is obvious nonsense. Whether or not you believe that the world was created by God, the one thing that no one can deny is that the Bible provided people and still provides people to this day with a shared code of moral ethics by which to follow and by which to maintain society. Now, as I said, I grew up in the church, Presbyterian church, and attended it all the way up through until my mid 20s. And I have my own issues with the way Christianity is often practiced, such as the fact that because I am obviously visually disabled, I'm in a wheelchair. Many Christians throughout the course of my life, including when I was a very young child, saw my disability as an opportunity to perform some shocking miracle and have me suddenly begin to walk. This happened not once, but several times. And each time it happened was very traumatic, particularly when I was a young child. It is not the kind of thing that any stranger should do to a young person, particularly when we're just learning how to cope with a severe and permanent disability. But that doesn't change the fact that the familial structure that is recommended by the Bible works and has proven to be stable and to produce strong, lasting societies. The man submits to God, the woman submits to the man, and the children submit to the parents. That is how it works. That is probably the most basic way you could describe that structure for the nuclear family. And the lack of that structure is what is causing, or at least in part causing, the constant chaos we see today. People who come from broken homes tend to perpetuate the cycle of brokenness and misery and needless suffering. That is why fatherless homes are such a terrible thing. And I think that, for example, the worst crime of feminism was to imply, and sometimes outright state, that a father's influence is unnecessary for the healthy upbringing of children. That is complete bullshit. And I don't care whether you're talking about sons or daughters, because a healthy masculine influence is required for the raising of both. When you try to divorce society from religious morality, you get what we have now, which is a secular free for all, where nobody knows what the rules are and nobody knows what they can and can't do, or more accurately, what they should and should not do. Take OnlyFans, for example. In case you've been living under a rock for some reason, OnlyFans is a platform which largely serves the function of allowing people to produce their own adult content and sell that to subscribers on a monthly basis. OnlyFans, perhaps more than anything else, is proof of our society's decline. And no, I'm not going to go on some kind of overly aggressive red pill rant about how women are evil. Because although women tend to be the ones who profit most from OnlyFans, the fact is there wouldn't be a market for it if men didn't pay these women to do what they do. And this, as I said, is probably the most obvious symbol of our decline. OnlyFans is worse even than what you could call traditional adult entertainment because it implies a personal connection with the individual creating the content that actually does not exist. So you have situations in which men are willing to pay a stranger vast amounts of money, often their entire life savings, just to feel some sort of human connection, even if that connection is fake. And I believe that all of this is born out of the loss or the disconnection from traditional religious values. So, as I say, even if you have doubts or just plain don't believe in the existence of God, I think that religious values and Christian values in particular are what produced the societies from which we arose, and the loss of them has been a tragedy for the people of this generation. Because if you can do anything you want to do, because you don't have any sort of moral code to abide by, at first that seems great, because there are no limits on what choices you can make. But sooner or later, you realize that having no limits on your choices means you get to a point where you simply don't know what to do with yourself. And that is where I believe we are as a global society right now. We are lost in the wilderness and we don't know which direction to take. So, if I had to summarize the entire point of this video, it's that the old traditions existed for a reason. And that reason is that they worked. And perhaps it's time we start to reincorporate them into our daily lives. I know that religious belief, particularly when it becomes too dogmatic, can have negative consequences of its own, such as in my case, people have very weird religious reactions to the fact of my disability. Some say that I should be grateful for my disability because it gives me the opportunity to rise to sainthood by bearing suffering, while others say that I must have been given this disability as a punishment for not being devout enough. So I'm not trying to convert anyone to the faith, particularly when I'm not even sure what I believe myself. But I do think that to throw everything out, as secular society has done, is what has directly led to all the chaos and suffering we see today. Because every time a society tries to replace religious values with a secular system of ethics, such as communism, for example, it fails miserably and leads to death and suffering on an inhuman scale. I hope that you have gotten something out of this video today, and as always, look after yourselves, take care of each other, and for now, farewell.